Welcome to the audiobook of Happy Hours, a gripping billionaire office romance with a twist of mystery, written by USA Today best-selling author Shelfie Bennett. This captivating story, inspired by the timeless storytelling of Agatha Christie, weaves suspense, romance, and high-stakes drama into a tale that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Brought to life by Shelfie Audiobook, this production is a seamless blend of riveting narration and heart-pounding storytelling. So, settle in and let the secrets of Happy Hours unfold. Because in this world, nothing is what it seems, and every hour is a chance for love. When the clock strikes 6 and the corporate grind halts, the world takes on a different hue. Happy Hours is the time when strangers become confidants, secrets simmer to the surface, and new stories begin. For Charlotte Charlie Morgan, Happy Hours is her escape from an uninspiring 9-to-5 job at a mid-tier corporate firm. Her evenings at the Velvet Room, a swanky bar nestled in the heart of Manhattan, are her little rebellion against monotony. But on one seemingly ordinary Friday, her carefully compartmentalized life shifts when a dark-suited stranger takes the barstool beside her. He's everything her life isn't, magnetic, confident, and seemingly at the top of the world. Their charged conversation leaves her both intrigued and wary. When he disappears before she can even get his name, Charlie brushes it off as just another fleeting encounter. Until Monday morning arrives. Her company has just been acquired by a mysterious billionaire conglomerate, and the new CEO is introduced. The stranger from the bar now stands at the helm of her office, his piercing blue eyes locking onto hers as if their encounter had been no coincidence. The stakes escalate when Charlie is unexpectedly promoted to a coveted executive role, reporting directly to him. At first, it seems like the opportunity of a lifetime, until she realizes she's been thrust into the middle of a web of corporate intrigue, dangerous secrets, and a passion that burns too brightly to ignore. With each late-night meeting and every stolen glance, Charlie unravels layers of her enigmatic boss, Oliver Knight, uncovering truths that blur the lines between love and deception. But as whispers of betrayal and hidden agendas start to surface, she is faced with a choice: expose the man she's falling for or risk everything for a love that might be built on lies. Happy Hours is a journey of heart-stopping romance and edge-of-your-seat mystery, proving that even in the most structured lives, the unexpected always finds a way to break through. Chapter 1: The Stranger at the Bar. The Velvet Room hummed with low jazz, the sound wrapping itself around Charlie like a comforting embrace. She sipped her old-fashioned, glancing at the clock above the bar. 6:30. Just late enough to unwind without feeling like she was running from her problems. Not that she had any pressing issues to escape, just the usual grind of working as a mid-level assistant at Brantley Enterprises. The familiar buzz of chatter and clinking glasses filled the air, but then something shifted. A presence beside her. "Is this seat taken?" The voice was deep, rich, and filled with the kind of confidence that made people listen. Charlie turned, her gaze meeting startling blue eyes that seemed to pierce straight through her. The man was effortlessly handsome, with a tailored navy suit that screamed wealth and power. His smile was small but deliberate, as if he was sizing her up for a reaction. "Not at all," she replied, motioning to the empty bar stool. She wasn't sure why she said yes. Usually, she preferred her Happy Hours solo. "Thanks. Long day," he said, loosening his tie as he sat. "Join the club," she quipped, raising her glass. He let out a low chuckle, a sound that made her stomach flutter unexpectedly. They fell into an easy rhythm of conversation. He was charming but guarded, revealing little about himself beyond vague mentions of work and travel. Charlie found herself doing most of the talking. Something about his presence made her want to fill the silence. It wasn't until she noticed the way he watched her, his gaze steady and intent, that she felt a flicker of unease. "Do you come here often?" she asked, trying to shift the focus. "First time," he admitted. "But I think I made a good choice." The way he said it, low and almost conspiratorial, made her cheeks flush. She sipped her drink to hide it. Before she could respond, his phone buzzed on the bar. He glanced at the screen and stood abruptly, pulling a few bills from his pocket and dropping them on the counter. "Duty calls," he said, his tone regretful. "It was nice meeting you." "Charlie," she supplied, surprised at how disappointed she felt. "Charlie," he repeated, his lips curling into a half-smile. "Until next time." And just like that, he was gone. That Monday morning, Charlie arrived at work to find the office in chaos. Whispers of an acquisition rippled through the halls, the kind of corporate shakeup that left everyone guessing their place in the new order. Her phone buzzed with a meeting notification. The entire company was being called into the main conference room for an announcement. When she entered, the air was thick with anticipation. The murmurs silenced as a tall man in a perfectly tailored navy suit took the podium. "Good morning," he began, his voice smooth and commanding. "My name is Oliver Knight, and I'm the new CEO of Brantley Enterprises." Charlie's breath caught in her throat. It was him, the stranger from the bar. And the way his eyes lingered on hers across the room left no doubt in her mind. This was no coincidence. Charlie barely heard the rest of Oliver Knight's speech. Words like growth opportunities and market expansion floated past her, muffled by the roar in her ears. Her gaze locked on him, memories from Friday night flooding back with unsettling clarity. Why hadn't he said anything? Had he recognized her? The way his eyes had paused on hers for a heartbeat suggested he did. But why pretend otherwise? "Charlie, are you okay?" asked Alyssa, her co-worker and closest friend in the office. She nudged Charlie gently, breaking her trance. "Yeah, I'm fine," Charlie lied, forcing a tight smile. "Just surprised." "Surprised? That's putting it lightly. Did you see the way he carries himself? He looks like he stepped off the cover of Forbes. I wouldn't be surprised if he starts making cuts though. Guys like him always do." Charlie nodded absent-mindedly, her thoughts spiraling. The next morning, an email landed in her inbox at precisely 7 a.m. It bore the subject line, "Urgent, private meeting with Oliver Knight." Her stomach clenched as she clicked it open. From Executive Office to Charlie Morgan. Time, 8:30 a.m. Location, CEO's office. Subject, urgent, private meeting with Oliver Knight. Please report to the CEO's office for a one-on-one discussion regarding strategic company goals. Strategic company goals? Charlie stared at the email in disbelief. She wasn't anyone special at Brantley Enterprises. Why would the CEO, of all people, want to meet with her? "Everything okay?" Alyssa asked as she passed Charlie's desk, coffee in hand. "Yeah," Charlie said, closing the email. "Just trying to figure out why the CEO wants to talk to me." Alyssa raised an eyebrow, curiosity sparking. "The new CEO? Oliver Knight? Alone? Maybe you're getting a promotion. Or maybe he's secretly an alien, and he wants you to help take over the world." Charlie let out a small laugh, but her nerves were anything but eased. By 8:25, she was outside Oliver's office, smoothing down her pencil skirt and taking a deep breath. The glass doors were sleek, modern, and intimidating, giving her a full view of the expansive office inside. Oliver was at his desk, his head bent over a stack of documents. Before she could psych herself out, the assistant at the front desk nodded and motioned her in. "Ah, Miss Morgan," Oliver said as she stepped inside. He stood and extended his hand, his smile as disarming as it had been at the bar. "Thank you for coming on such short notice." "Of course, Mr. Knight," Charlie said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. She shook his hand, feeling a jolt of electricity at the contact. "Please call me Oliver," he said, gesturing for her to sit. He returned to his chair, leaning forward slightly. "I won't waste your time. I've reviewed the employee records, and your name stood out." "It did?" she asked, unable to keep the surprise from her voice. He nodded. "Your initiative, your ability to problem solve, qualities like yours don't go unnoticed. Which is why I'd like to offer you a promotion." Charlie blinked. "A promotion?" "Yes. Effective immediately, you'll be transitioning to a project management role, working directly with me. I'll need someone with your skills for the new initiatives we're implementing." Her pulse quickened. This was unexpected, thrilling, and terrifying. "I'm honored, but why me? There are plenty of more experienced employees." Oliver's smile softened. "Because I believe in potential, Miss Morgan. And yours is undeniable." Something about the way he said it, his gaze lingering a moment too long, sent a flush creeping up her neck. As the days passed, Charlie was swept up in her new role. Meetings with Oliver became a regular occurrence, each one an exercise in restraint. His professional demeanor was impeccable, but every so often, there was a flicker of something more, an intensity that left her both exhilarated and unsettled. It wasn't just the work that kept her on edge. There were whispers around the office, rumors about Oliver's past, his rapid rise to power, and his reputation as a man who played by his own rules. "You've heard about his last company, right?" Alyssa whispered one afternoon over lunch. "He bought out 3 divisions, merged them, and then dismantled the entire operation within a year. Hundreds of jobs gone." Charlie frowned. "That doesn't make sense. Why would he do that?" "Profit margins," Alyssa said with a shrug. "He's ruthless." Ruthless. The word echoed in Charlie's mind, clashing with the man she was coming to know, the man who stayed late working beside her, who encouraged her ideas, who looked at her like she was the only person in the room. And yet, there were moments when his walls went up, when his charm gave way to something colder, more guarded. It was in those moments that Charlie couldn't help but wonder, who was the real Oliver Knight? The answer, she feared, might be far more complicated and dangerous than she was prepared for. The promotion came with perks, her own office, a generous pay raise, and the kind of responsibility that made her mornings start earlier and her nights end later. But it also came with a spotlight. People in the office were watching her now, their whispers a constant undercurrent in the air. "Why her?" someone muttered in the break room one day, not bothering to lower their voice as Charlie passed. "She must have something on him," another snickered. "Or maybe she's just close to the boss." Charlie gritted her teeth and kept walking. It wasn't the first time she'd heard it, and she doubted it would be the last. Her friendship with Alyssa helped keep her sane, but even Alyssa had her limits. "You've got to let it roll off your back," Alyssa said one evening over wine at Charlie's apartment. "If you let every petty comment get to you, you'll burn out." "I know," Charlie said, swirling her glass. "But it's hard to ignore. I've worked my ass off, and they think I'm sleeping my way to the top." "Then prove them wrong," Alyssa said with a smirk. "Keep kicking ass at your job. And if you're really losing sleep over it, maybe talk to him." The thought of confronting Oliver about the rumors made Charlie's stomach twist. Their relationship, professional, she reminded herself, was already complicated enough. Monday morning brought another curveball. As Charlie approached the boardroom for the weekly strategy meeting, she noticed a distinct chill in the air. The senior executives, seasoned professionals with decades of experience, sat stiffly in their chairs, their expressions unreadable. Oliver was at the head of the table, his usual composure giving away nothing. He nodded as Charlie entered, motioning to an empty seat beside him. "Miss Morgan, just in time," he said smoothly. As the meeting unfolded, Charlie couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The executives avoided looking at her, their clipped tones barely masking their discomfort. "Now let's discuss the findings from the merger analysis," Oliver said, his voice sharp enough to cut glass. He turned to Charlie. "Miss Morgan, would you care to walk us through your projections?" All eyes turned to her. She took a steadying breath and launched into her report, her confidence building as she went. But when she finished, a heavy silence hung in the room. "Interesting approach," one of the senior executives said, his tone dripping with condescension. "But don't you think it's a bit ambitious?" Charlie blinked. "Ambitious perhaps, but the data supports it. If we streamline these processes, the savings could be." "Enough," Oliver said, his voice quiet but firm. The executive fell silent, his face paling slightly. "I hired Miss Morgan because she has the ability to think outside the box," Oliver continued, his gaze sweeping the room. "If any of you have a better idea, I'd love to hear it. Otherwise, we move forward with her proposal." No one spoke. "Good. Then we're done here," Oliver said, rising from his seat. As the executives filed out, their gazes flicking between Charlie and Oliver, she felt a knot of unease tighten in her chest. Later that day, Charlie found herself summoned to Oliver's office again. She stepped inside, her nerves frayed from the tension of the meeting. "Close the door," he said, his voice softer than she expected. She did as he asked, then turned to face him. "Is everything okay?" "Are you okay?" he countered, leaning back in his chair. Charlie hesitated. "I'm fine. Just trying to get used to the dynamics." "They're testing you," Oliver said, his expression unreadable. "It's what they do. But you held your ground. That's what matters." "I appreciate you standing up for me," she said, her voice quieter than she intended. "But I can fight my own battles." A small smile played at his lips. "I have no doubt you can. But it's my responsibility to make sure you have the space to do so." There it was again, that flicker of something deeper, something more personal. Charlie shifted on her feet, unsure of how to respond. "Charlie," he said, his tone softer now. You've earned your place here. Don't let anyone make you think otherwise. The sincerity in his voice caught her off guard. For a moment, the guarded CEO she'd come to know was gone, replaced by someone more genuine, more vulnerable. Thank you, she said, her throat tight. His gaze lingered on hers, the silence between them charged. Then, just as quickly as the moment had arrived, it was gone. Oliver straightened, his professional mask slipping back into place. Get some rest, he said. Tomorrow's another big day. As Charlie left his office, her heart raced for reasons she couldn't quite explain. That night, unable to sleep, Charlie opened her laptop and began digging into Oliver's past. She told herself it was just curiosity, an effort to understand the man who seemed to hold all the cards. What she found only deepened the mystery. Articles about his meteoric rise painted a picture of a man who was equal parts genius and enigma. He had built an empire from the ground up, making bold moves that had left his competitors in the dust. But there were gaps in the story, periods of time where his trail went cold, and rumors of shadowy deals that no one could prove. One article in particular caught her eye. The untouchable billionaire, Oliver Knight's rise to power. It detailed a scandal from years ago involving a hostile takeover and accusations of insider trading. Oliver had emerged unscathed, but the controversy had left a lingering stain on his reputation. Charlie stared at the screen, her mind racing. Was this the ruthless man Alyssa had warned her about? Or was there more to the story than anyone knew? The more she learned, the more she realized one thing: Oliver Knight was a man of secrets. And if she wasn't careful, she might become one of them. Charlie's curiosity wasn't just a spark anymore, it was a roaring flame. The more she tried to focus on her new responsibilities, the more Oliver Knight's mysteries tugged at her mind. She told herself to stop digging, that it wasn't her place, but every interaction with him only made her more certain that he was hiding something. That certainty turned to unease when she found a plain envelope waiting on her desk Monday morning. There was no name, no markings, just her title typed neatly across the front: Charlie Morgan, Project Manager. She glanced around the office, but no one seemed to be paying her any attention. Sliding her nail under the flap, she unfolded a single sheet of paper. Stay in your lane. He's not what you think he is. Charlie's breath hitched. Her first instinct was to crumple the note and pretend she hadn't seen it, but her hands trembled as she held it. Who had sent this? What did they know? And most importantly, what were they trying to warn her about? Her thoughts spiraled as she tucked the paper into her bag and powered through her day, trying to ignore the shadow that now loomed over her every move. By evening, she decided she couldn't sit on the note without answers. Maybe it was reckless, but the only person who could shed light on the situation was Oliver himself. He'd made it clear he wanted transparency, and she needed to know if the storm brewing around him was one she'd been unwillingly dragged into. When most of the office had cleared out, she made her way to his floor. His assistant was long gone, and the corridor outside his office was quiet, save for the soft click of her heels. She knocked, her heart pounding. Come in, Oliver's voice called. She stepped inside to find him standing by the windows, his tie loosened and a tumbler of whiskey in hand. The glow of the city lights reflected in the glass, casting him in a mixture of shadow and amber hues. He looked every inch the powerful CEO, but also something else. Worn, tired, human. Charlie, he said, turning to her, surprise flickering across his face. I wasn't expecting you. I need to talk to you, she said, her voice firmer than she felt. She closed the door behind her. About this. She pulled the note from her bag and handed it to him. Oliver's expression darkened as he read the words, his jaw tightening. Where did you get this? He asked, his voice low. It was on my desk this morning, Charlie said. I didn't recognize the handwriting, and no one saw who left it. I thought you should know. Oliver's eyes flicked to hers, his expression unreadable. And what do you think it means? I don't know, she admitted. But it's clear that someone's trying to warn me about you. About something. I just thought. You thought what? He interrupted, his voice sharper now. That I'd have all the answers? That I'd tell you it's nothing and make it go away? Charlie bristled at his tone. I thought you'd care. This isn't just about me, it's about you too. For a long moment, he didn't respond. Then he sighed, running a hand through his hair as he set the glass down on his desk. You're right, he said finally, his tone softer. I do care. But whoever sent this note isn't your concern. It's mine. Charlie's stomach tightened. You know who sent it? I have my suspicions, Oliver said, his gaze steady but cautious. There are people who would rather see me fail. People who will go to great lengths to make that happen. Is this about the company? Charlie asked. Or is it about something else? Oliver hesitated, the moment stretching too long. His expression was conflicted, as though he were weighing how much to reveal. It's complicated, he said finally. There are things about my life, my past, that I can't share. Not yet. Why not? Charlie demanded, stepping closer. You tell me to trust you, to fight my battles, but you're asking me to work in the dark. That's not fair, Oliver. Fair, he repeated, his voice rising slightly. He stepped toward her, his presence overwhelming. Do you think I wanted this? Do you think I enjoy keeping secrets? Everything I've built, everything I've worked for, it's all hanging by a thread, Charlie. One wrong move, and it all comes crashing down. His words hung in the air, charged with emotion. For the first time, Charlie saw the cracks in his armor, the fear, the frustration, the weight of carrying something far heavier than he let on. I don't need all the answers, she said quietly. But I need to know I can trust you. Oliver looked at her, his gaze searching. Then, to her surprise, he reached for her hand, his touch warm and steady. You can trust me, he said, his voice low and earnest. But if you dig too deep, you might not like what you find. The warning sent a chill down her spine, but she didn't pull away. His grip tightened for a moment before he released her. Go home, he said, stepping back. And let me handle this. Charlie nodded, though her mind was anything but settled. As she left his office, her thoughts swirled with unanswered questions. What was Oliver hiding? And why did it feel like, no matter how hard she tried, she was being drawn deeper into his secrets? When she reached the elevator, she turned back for one last look. Through the glass, she could see Oliver at his desk, his head bowed, the weight of his world pressing down on him. The morning after her tense conversation with Oliver, Charlie arrived at work feeling like she was walking into a minefield. Every glance from her co-workers felt sharper, every whisper more pointed. She tried to brush it off, focusing instead on the growing pile of reports waiting on her desk. But Oliver's words from the night before echoed in her mind. If you dig too deep, you might not like what you find. What exactly had she gotten herself into? By mid-afternoon, Charlie was so buried in spreadsheets that she almost missed the email notification flashing on her screen. From Oliver Knight to Charlie Morgan. Subject: Meeting request. Time: 6 p.m. Location: my office. Her stomach twisted. A late meeting with Oliver was not unusual. He often worked late and expected the same from his inner circle, but after their charged exchange the previous evening, she wasn't sure what to expect. Burning the midnight oil already? Alyssa teased, leaning over Charlie's desk. Looks like it, Charlie said, forcing a smile. Oliver wants a meeting at 6. Alyssa raised an eyebrow. Wow. He really has you on call. Are you sure you're not secretly his favorite? Charlie rolled her eyes, brushing off the comment, but the flush creeping up her neck betrayed her unease. The office was eerily quiet when 6 o'clock rolled around. Most of the staff had already left for the day, their absence amplifying the sound of Charlie's heels clicking against the polished floor. When she reached Oliver's office, she hesitated for a moment before knocking. Come in, his voice called from within. She pushed the door open to find him seated behind his desk, his tie loosened and the top button of his shirt undone. Papers were spread across the desk, but his piercing blue eyes lifted to meet hers as she entered. Close the door, he said. She did, the click of the latch sounding louder than it should have. Thank you for staying late, he said, motioning for her to sit. No problem, she replied, settling into the chair across from him. What's this about? Oliver leaned back in his chair, studying her for a moment. The weight of his gaze was almost unbearable, and Charlie felt the tension crackling in the air between them. I wanted to talk to you about the note, he said finally. Her pulse quickened. Did you figure out who sent it? I'm working on it, he said, his tone carefully neutral. But that's not why I called you here. I want to make something clear, Charlie. Whatever happens, I need you to stay focused. There are people in this company who would love nothing more than to use you as a pawn to get to me. Me? She asked, startled. Why would they do that? Because you're close to me, he said simply. The statement hung in the air, its implications impossible to ignore. I'm not close to you, she said, though the words felt hollow. A flicker of amusement crossed Oliver's face, but his expression quickly turned serious again. You are. Whether you realize it or not. And that puts a target on your back. Charlie swallowed hard, the gravity of his words sinking in. Are you saying I should step back from this role? No, he said firmly. I need you here. I need someone I can trust. Her breath caught. The intensity in his voice, the way his eyes locked onto hers, it was almost too much. Oliver, Don't, he said, his voice low. Don't overthink this. Just, stay the course. Can you do that for me? She nodded, her throat too tight to speak. The moment stretched, the silence between them heavy and charged. And then before she could process what was happening, Oliver stood and walked around the desk, stopping just a few feet away from her. Charlie, he said softly, his tone almost a whisper. Her heart hammered in her chest as she looked up at him, unsure of what to say or do. You've been on my mind, he admitted, his voice tinged with something raw and vulnerable. More than you should be. Her breath hitched. Oliver, this isn't. We shouldn't. I know, he said, stepping closer. But I can't seem to stop. The air between them crackled, the tension so thick it was almost suffocating. Charlie felt herself leaning toward him, her resolve crumbling with every second that passed. And then his lips were on hers. The kiss was electric, sending a shockwave through her entire body. She should have pulled away, should have stopped it before it went any further, but she didn't. Instead, she melted into him, her hands clutching his shirt as his arms wrapped around her, pulling her closer. When they finally broke apart, both of them were breathing hard, their faces just inches apart. This changes everything, Charlie whispered. I know, Oliver said, his voice steady despite the storm raging in his eyes. But I don't regret it. She searched his face, looking for answers, for reassurance, for something that made sense in the chaos of the moment. But all she found was the same turmoil she felt within herself. Before she could respond, his phone buzzed on the desk, shattering the moment. Oliver glanced at the screen, his expression darkening. I have to take this, he said reluctantly, stepping back. Charlie nodded, her head spinning as she stood. I should go. He didn't stop her, but as she walked out of his office, she felt his eyes on her, the weight of what had just happened pressing down on her. As the elevator doors closed behind her, Charlie leaned against the wall, her mind racing. She had just crossed a line she could never uncross. And she had no idea what it would mean for her, and for them.